Did you know that the secret way to win Terra Mystica is actually run outside, dig in a garden a little, and run back in right before the game? Well, I'll tell you more about that in a minute. But first, welcome to Rest and Reason. This is a channel where we try to make it so that you both buy the best possible games you can buy for you and your group, but also give you ways to help take those games that you love so much and make them a little bit better now that you're used to really good games. Now, if you want more of this kind of content, please hit that subscribe button, ring that notification bell, and set it to all so you don't miss any of our shorts videos, which honestly help you the most with finding which games you should or shouldn't buy. But now, let's get back to why it is that you can dig in a garden and win Terra Mystica. It all comes down to the fact that the starting player in Terra Mystica is based on who last dug in a garden. I think it was specifically a garden planter, but that's semantics and most groups will say, okay, you were in a garden. So, you get to go first. The person who goes first chooses their faction first. Choosing your faction first is well known and statistically proven to be the best way to be able to win the game or have a big advantage over your opponents, because the different factions are not equally powerful. And we will see that later and then see how the game company themselves actually tried to fix it. Terra Mystica is aiming to be a Euro game, a game that mixes interaction and thought in almost equal measure, but that tries to take luck out of the equation as much as possible to try to allow players to really affect each other and their own game instead of the game determining their destiny. Its main mechanic is engine building. You start with just a tiny little snowball at the top, and then as it rolls down the hill, it builds up steam, it gets bigger and bigger and bigger till the bottom, it hits those victory points and hopefully wins you the game. Ultimately, that means you might start with 1 wood, and by the end you might end with 25 wood. Obviously, that's not for this game specifically, but that's how engine builders work. Finally, the main feel of the game is a civilization industry. You see, it's not a normal civilization game in the sense that you have the 4X feel, but instead is more of a game where you feel like you're a bunch of races trying to have an industrial revolution with a little bit of magic mixed in, and that's aiming to produce points. It's like you're just covering the map in factories that basically just pump out points for you and your group, which actually leads to a really enjoyable experience. However, this game does have some major issues. First off, in enjoyment, the problem for this game is that if you get a bad faction, you'll probably have a bad game. Now, this isn't as true for somebody who's played the game over and over again, of course, but especially for new players, if they get screwed and have to start with a really bad faction, they might not understand why they're losing because they are playing really well. But they won't realize that it's because their faction is significantly worse. And the statistics prove this. Out of 96,241 games played on this online site for Terra Mystica, in 3 to 5 player games, there was a 0.71 rank difference between one faction and another. Now that sounds complicated. Basically what that means is, if I were playing a game against 3 people, I would probably jump from 3rd to 2nd place, 2nd to 1st place, just by having this faction versus this faction. That's it. That's not a good feeling, and that's not a good balance for a game that's supposed to be about factions fighting each other. And the publishers realized this, and they sent out 2 different solutions. First, they sent out an auction system. Now, the auction system comes in the expansion Fire and Ice. This expansion gives a lot of other stuff, but you could ultimately just take the rulebook, which I put in the description, and use that auction system in the original game instead of having to buy the expansion. I don't know which I would recommend because the expansion is really amazing and adds a lot of fun stuff. So it's up to you to decide which one you do. But the auction system ultimately gives everybody some points. They use those points to bid on whether they're going to go 1st or 2nd or whatever, and then they get to choose their factions. This makes it so that, especially for new players, they could kind of just sit back and not bid and keep all the extra points, and for the experienced players, they can fight over the best faction and then use that faction to claw their way to the 1st place spot. The other solution was just given out for free by the game company, and again, the link is in the description. This is a basic thing where everybody starts with different amounts of victory points based on which faction they got or they chose. This system works really, really well for beginners because they don't have to think or know much about the game. They can just instinctually choose what they think would be fun. So both of these solutions can help with the enjoyment, but they don't help with this second problem. which is balance. You see, in the original game of Terra Mystica, the cult track is supposed to be about 50% of what the game's about. And I take this directly from the instruction manual itself, which shows that the cult track, along with building your buildings, is supposed to be one of the main focuses of the game. But the cult track statistically only gets you 26% of your points at maximum. However, the game company came up with a solution to this, and it actually was putting out a second game. Gaia Project. Gaia Project might not look like a solution to the problems of Terra Mystica, but that's only because you haven't opened the box and played it yet. Once you've opened the box and played it, if you've ever played Terra Mystica, you're going to realize very quickly it's basically the same game. But I would call it Terra Mystica 2.0. Here's why. First off, those statistics I just talked about for the cult track, you now have a new technology track. Not only do you need this technology to basically do anything else in the game, but it also can get you 54% of your points in the game, which shows that going for the technology actually becomes important in this particular version of the game. On top of this, it actually fixes the faction problem from the last one somewhat. It doesn't do it as much as I would like, but instead of a 7-1 rank difference, you have a 0.45 rank difference. That means that yes, it does have an impact which faction you get, but it has a significantly less impact. It's not going to be the difference of a rank. It's probably going to be about a half a rank, which is still too much for my liking, but you could always use the auction system from Terra Mystica in Gaia Project, which is honestly what most players do anyway. So you can use the same solutions on Gaia Project while it also solves the issue inherently already. Now, we've seen that there are two different ways to fix the original Terra Mystica and that there's Gaia Project. So which one of these should you do? Well, let's get into the scores to find that out. First off, the original Terra Mystica is a 3.38 out of 5, and that gives it a silver recliner. This is a general recommendation and a game that I would say if you think fantasy engine building sounds like fun and building a corporate empire, but that's basically just a bunch of fantasy races with some temples that act instead of factories, then this is the game for you. It's really fun and it's really exciting. But which one of the fixes makes it better? First off, the starting score difference makes a 3.51 out of 5. So it does improve the game, but it doesn't improve it by very much. And the big reason for this is those starting points are going to make the game almost reversed in difficulty, because the main group who's going to benefit from it, new players, might end up with a really good faction and then have to claw their way to the top with that good faction. Thus, the experienced players start with more, and the other people start with less, and one of them knows how to play the game and one of them doesn't. So it's going to be easy for these guys starting with more points to maintain that lead throughout the game than for these guys to catch up. Ultimately, this is a small problem, but it is definitely a problem that is solved by the next solution. The bidding fix gets it up to 3.68 out of 5 and definitely beats the starting point change. The reason for this is simple. If somebody doesn't want to bid, they don't have to bid. And more than likely, experienced players are going to be the ones who bid on things instead of new players. New players are probably going to sit back, say, I don't know what's going on, I'm just going to sit back. Whereas an experienced player is going to come in and say, I know this faction is better and worth the extra points, so I'm going to do it. That also means that instead of like the starting points, the experienced player is going to be the one starting with a deficit basically every time, which is a good thing because it means the experienced player gets the fun of trying to claw their way to catch up with the person ahead of them. And the beginning player gets the satisfaction of feeling like they're in the lead for a decent amount of the game. However, I wouldn't honestly recommend doing either of these fixes. In fact, I would recommend you buy Gaia Project. This is because Gaia Project gets a 3.8 out of 5. Now, even though that's still a silver recliner, for a game like this, that's about as high as it's going to go. You see, Gaia Project and Terra Mystica are both extremely difficult games, and extremely mechanical and focused games where it's very difficult to play them. And that means only certain people, like myself, are going to like it. But that also means it's not coming off of your shelf very often, and thus, it's not something I would recommend to most people, thus not a golden recliner. But for those specific people who want this kind of a game, Gaia Project is your better choice than Terra Mystica, because Gaia Project is really just Terra Mystica 2.0. The statistics prove this 100%. I have all the links to the statistics down in the description, and I've already mentioned them. But in total, we are comparing 8,833 games of Gaia Project versus 96,241 games of Terra Mystica. We have plenty of data to be able to go pretty distinctly. Gaia Project is more balanced than Terra Mystica. If you do want the fantasy, though, you will have to go with Terra Mystica, and because it's still a silver recliner, I'm not going to stop you. Absolutely, if you'd rather play on a terrestrial globe than in the stars, then go play Terra Mystica. But if you're like me and you're coming in for the mechanics and the side thing is the theme and you don't mind it being in space, then definitely Gaia Project is the better choice. Please make sure to hit that subscribe button. Like I said, ring that notification bell, make it go all the way up to the all section, so that way you don't miss any of our shorts, because the algorithm seems to think that you people who love this video might not actually want to watch my shorts. And I promise you, they're at least entertaining, and you can at least yell at me. So make sure to yell at me in those comments. Let me know that you're watching them, that you agree, that you disagree. Let me know how passionate you are, as I know you are. And if you're really passionate for this channel and what we do, please, $1 a month to our Patreon will help us immensely to keep bringing you guys this content that hopefully helps save you money in the long run. And as always, thank you so much for joining us today on Rest and Reason.